Hey guys, tonight we step into a world that looks quiet, almost peaceful at first glance. A small medieval village, the kind you might imagine as simple, maybe even charming. But as you open your eyes in the faint grey light of early morning, lying on a rough bed of straw, something immediately feels off. The air is colder than you expected, and it clings to your skin in a way that makes you hesitate before even moving. You take a slow breath, and right away you realize you probably wouldn't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie there for a moment longer, staring up at a ceiling that isn't really a ceiling, just rough wooden beams and thatch, with tiny gaps where faint light seeps through. The cold hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it feels sharper now that you're awake. A mainstream historical fact is that most medieval homes lack proper insulation, meaning indoor temperatures often match the outside environment, especially during colder months. So when you wake up cold. You shift slightly, and the straw beneath you rustles. It's not soft. It's not comfortable. It presses unevenly against your back, and you can feel small bits poking through the thin layer of cloth beneath you. You sit up slowly, pulling whatever rough covering you had closer for just a second longer. It doesn't help much. The quirky historical tidbit is that straw bedding wasn't just uncomfortable, it also had to be replaced regularly because it could attract insects and moisture over time, which means what you're lying on right now might not be as fresh as you'd hope. You swing your legs over the side, your feet touching the cold ground. Instantly, you feel the dampness, the chill seeping upward. There's no warm floor, no soft surface, just earth. You pause there, sitting at the edge of your bed, letting your body fully wake up to the reality around you. And it's not gentle. Historians still argue whether medieval people were more physically resilient to these daily discomforts or simply had no alternative but to endure them. Either way, this is your morning now. You stand up, slowly. Your body feels stiff not from one bad night of sleep, but from what feels like a pattern. Like this isn't unusual. Like every morning begins this way. You stretch slightly, but even that feels limited. The space around you is small. You're aware of it immediately. There's no room to move freely, no open space to breathe deeply. You glance toward the small opening that lets in light. It's not a window in the modern sense, just a gap, maybe covered loosely. The outside world is still quiet, but not silent. You can hear faint sounds, a distant movement, maybe footsteps, maybe animals. The day is already beginning. You take a slow breath, and the air feels heavy, not unbearable, just different, less fresh than you're used to. It carries a faint trace of smoke, something earthy, something lived in. You've only been awake for a few moments, and already you feel it. This isn't going to be easy. You reach for your clothing, if you can call it that. It's simple, rough, likely the same thing you wore yesterday. And the day before that, there's no real sense of changing into something new. You just continue. You pull it on, the fabric brushing against your skin. It's coarse, slightly stiff, and not particularly warm despite its thickness. It does its job, but nothing more. You step toward the doorway, pushing it open slightly, and the cold greets you again. It's sharper outside, more direct. You take a step out, your breath faintly visible in the early air. The ground beneath your feet feels uneven, firm in some places, soft in others. You look around. The village is waking up. Not quickly, not energetically, but steadily. A few figures move in the distance. Someone carrying something. Someone already working. There's no sense of rushing, but there's also no sense of rest. Because rest doesn't last long here. You take another step forward, your body adjusting, your senses slowly opening to everything around you. And that's when it settles in fully. This isn't just about one uncomfortable morning. This is every morning. The cold, the stiffness, the rough start. There's no gradual ease into the day, no comfort waiting for you. You simply wake up and begin. And as you stand there, in the quiet grey light, feeling the cold air press against you from all sides, one thought becomes very clear. If this is how your day starts, then everything that follows is going to be even harder. You stand there for a moment longer, letting the cold settle into your bones before turning back inside, not because it's warmer, just because it's slightly less exposed. Your clothing shifts as you move, the rough fabric brushing against your skin in a way that's impossible to ignore. It's stiff in some places, softer in others, but never truly comfortable. You look down at it. This is what you wear, not just today, but most days. A mainstream historical fact is that in the Middle Ages, clothing was expensive and time-consuming to produce, which meant most people owned only a few garments, often wearing the same outfit for extended periods. You can feel that reality now. The fabric doesn't feel fresh. It feels used, not dirty in a dramatic sense, but lived in, worn, carrying the weight of yesterday, and probably the day before that too. You adjust the sleeves slightly, the cloth resisting just a little before settling again. It doesn't move easily. It doesn't adapt to you. You adapt to it. You take a slow breath, and as you do, you notice something subtle. The scent. Not strong, not overwhelming, but there. A faint trace of everything this clothing has been. Through smoke, work, sleep, the air of the hut. All of it absorbed. A quirky historical tidbit is that people in medieval times sometimes used herbs or flowers to mask odors in clothing, tucking them into garments or storage areas as a simple form of fragrance. You glance around briefly. No sign of anything like that here, just practicality. You shift your weight, the fabric tightening slightly across your shoulders. It's not tailored. It's not designed for comfort. It's made to last. And it shows. Historians still argue whether medieval people were significantly less concerned with cleanliness, or whether their standards were simply shaped by necessity and available resources. Some evidence suggests they valued cleanliness but had limited ways to maintain it consistently. You can sense that balance, because this doesn't feel like neglect. It feels like limitation. You run your hand lightly along the fabric, feeling its texture, coarse threads, uneven stitching, small imperfections that remind you this wasn't made in a factory. It was made by hand, probably over hours, maybe days, which means replacing it isn't simple. You move slightly, testing your range of motion. The clothing restricts you just enough to be noticeable, especially around your arms and shoulders. It's not painful, just present, constantly. You step back toward the doorway again, the morning light spilling in just enough to show the details more clearly. The fabric looks dull, its color muted earth tones that blend into the environment. Nothing stands out, nothing is meant to. You take another breath, and again, that faint scent lingers. It's not something you react to anymore, not strongly. It's just there, part of the experience. You realize something quietly. This isn't something you think about often here. You don't wake up and question your clothing. You don't expect it to feel new. You simply wear it, because that's how life works. You step outside again, your shoes pressing into the ground as you move. The cold air brushes against your face, but your body has already started to adjust. The clothing helps, a little, but not enough to fully protect you from the environment. It's more like a barrier, a thin one. You walk a few steps forward, passing by another figure. Their clothing looks similar, same rough texture, same muted tones, same signs of long use. You don't notice anything unusual about it, because nothing is unusual. This is standard. You keep moving, your awareness slowly shifting from discomfort to observation. The fabric rubs slightly at your neck. Your sleeve catches briefly on your hand as you move. Small things, repeated. You pass another person, then another, and with each one you see the same pattern. Clothing that lasts. Clothing that endures. Clothing that endures. Clothing that carries time with it. You take a slow breath, the air settling around you once more, and for a moment you think about something simple, what it would feel like to wear something clean, something soft, something new. But that thought doesn't last long, because here, that's not the expectation. Here, clothing isn't about comfort. It's about survival. It protects you just enough to get through the day, nothing more. You adjust your sleeve again, more out of habit than necessity, and continue walking. The fabric settles back into place, familiar now, predictable, and as you move forward, one realization becomes clear. This isn't something that improves over time. It doesn't get better. It just becomes normal, and as that thought settles in, You take another step into the slowly waking world around you, wearing the same thing you wore yesterday, and likely the same thing you'll wear tomorrow. You take a few more steps forward, the village slowly coming to life around you when a new sensation begins to creep in. Hunger. Not sharp, not urgent, just present. A quiet reminder that the day is begun, and your body is already asking for something. You follow the faint movement of people ahead, your feet guiding you almost automatically. There's no clear sign pointing you anywhere, but there's a rhythm to this place, and you begin to fall into it. You notice a small gathering near a simple structure. Nothing grand, just a space where people seem to pause, to sit, to eat. You move a little closer, and this is where breakfast happens. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval diets, especially for peasants, were heavily based on simple, repetitive foods like bread, porridge, and occasionally vegetables. Meat was rare for most people and often reserved for special occasions. You watch as someone lifts a wooden bowl, steam rising faintly from its surface. Whatever's inside is soft, thick, and plain. Porridge, or something very close to it. You step closer, and soon enough, a similar bowl is placed into your hands. It's warm, thankfully, and you can feel the heat through the rough material. You sit down on a nearby surface, if it can be called that. A simple wooden plank, slightly uneven, but stable enough. You look down at the bowl. This is your breakfast. No variety, no color, no aroma that draws you in, just sustenance. You lift a small wooden spoon, dipping it into the mixture. It moves slowly, thick and heavy. You bring it up, watching as it settles, and then, carefully, you take a bite. It's warm. That's the first thing you notice, and for a moment, that warmth is comforting. But beyond that, there's not much. The taste is plain, mild, almost neutral. It fills your mouth, your body registering it as food, as energy, but not as something to enjoy. A quirky historical tidbit is that medieval bread was often coarse and dense, sometimes containing small bits of grain husks or even grit from the grinding process, making it far less refined than modern bread. You glance at a piece of bread nearby, noticing its rough surface, its uneven shape. It doesn't look soft. It looks sturdy, like everything else here. You take another bite of the porridge, slower this time, letting it settle. It's not bad, but it's not good either. It just is. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were nutritionally adequate for the average person, or whether many lived in a constant state of mild malnutrition. While some diets provided enough calories, variety, and balance were often limited. You can feel that limitation now. This meal fills you, but it doesn't satisfy you. There's a difference. You look around as others eat quietly. No one rushing, no one complaining. This is normal. This is expected. No one is waiting for something better, because there is nothing better. You take another bite, then another, the rhythm becoming mechanical. Spoon to bowl, bowl to mouth. Warmth, fullness, repetition. You notice how quickly the bowl empties, not because you're eating fast, but because there was never much there to begin with. You scrape the bottom lightly, gathering what's left, and then it's done. You sit there for a moment, holding the empty bowl. Your body's slightly warmer now, slightly more awake, but not energized, not refreshed, just ready enough. You set the bowl aside, watching as others do the same. No lingering, no second servings. The meal is over as simply as it began. You stand up slowly, your body adjusting once more, and that's when you realize something important. This isn't a meal you look forward to, it's a meal you rely on. There's no excitement, no anticipation, just necessity. You take a slow breath, the air settling around you again, and glance back at the place where you sat. Nothing about it invites you to stay. Nothing encourages you to return for comfort. It's just part of the routine. You step away, your feet finding the path again, your mind already shifting toward what comes next. Because breakfast isn't a break, it's a preparation, a small pause before the real part of the day begins. And as you walk forward, the faint warmth from the meal already starting to fade, one thought settles quietly in your mind. If this is how the day fuels you, then whatever comes next is going to demand everything you have. You don't get much time to think about the meal, because almost as soon as it's over, the day begins in full. There's no signy, No bell, no announcement, just movement. People begin to rise, to gather tools, to head in different directions with a quiet sense of purpose. And without being told, you feel it too, that subtle pull to get moving. Because standing still here isn't really an option. You take a step forward, then another, following the general flow. Your body isn't fully ready. The stiffness from sleep still lingers. Your hands still feel a little cold. Your mind only half awake. But none of that seems to matter. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval peasants often began work at sunrise and continued until sunset, especially during planting and harvest seasons. Their schedules were dictated by daylight, not comfort. You glance up briefly. The sun is only just beginning to rise. And yet, the work has already started. You find yourself moving toward an open stretch of land just beyond the cluster of homes. The ground changes beneath your feet, less packed, more uneven, slightly softer in places. Fields. This is where most of the day will happen. You notice others already there, bending down, lifting tools, starting their tasks without hesitation. There's no warm-up, no easing into it, just immediate effort. You hesitate for a second, just long enough to feel out of place. Then you reach for a tool nearby. It's heavier than you expect, not impossibly heavy, but enough that you feel it in your grip right away. A quirky historical tidbit is that many medieval farming tools were simple and manually operated, often made from wood and iron, requiring significant physical effort compared to modern machinery. You adjust your hold slightly, your fingers tightening around the handle. There's no instruction, no explanation. You just begin. You press the tool into the soil, pushing down with your body weight. The ground resists at first, firm from the cold of the night. Then, slowly, it gives. Not easily, but enough. You pull back, the motion heavier than it should be. Your arms feel it immediately. Not pain, but effort. You do it again and again. Each movement deliberate, each action requiring focus. Historians still argue whether medieval labor was as relentlessly exhausting as often portrayed, or whether people developed efficient rhythms that made the work more sustainable. Either way, it demanded consistency. You start to understand that rhythm now. Not because it's easy, but because it repeats. Push, lift, step, repeat. Push, lift, step. The sound of tools hitting soil fills the air, blending with quiet voices, the occasional movement of animals somewhere in the distance. There's no music, no distraction, just work. You feel your breathing begin to change, slightly heavier, slightly deeper. Your body warms up, not from comfort, but from exertion. The cold fades. Replaced by effort, you pause for a brief moment, straightening your back slightly. It's not a full rest, just a second, and even that feels noticeable, because no one else is stopping. They move steadily, their actions practiced, efficient, almost automatic. You step back into the rhythm. Push, lift, step, repeat. The tool presses into your hands, the rough wood rubbing against your skin. You can already feel where it might start to wear if you're not careful. But there's no time to adjust much. The work continues. You glance to your side, noticing someone working at the same pace, their movements smooth, consistent. They don't seem rushed, but they don't slow down either. It's a balance, a steady output. You try to match it, and slowly you do. Not perfectly, but enough to keep going. The sun rises a little higher now, its light spreading across the field. It doesn't feel warm yet, but it's there. A quiet reminder that time is moving, and with it, so must you. You take another breath, your body now fully awake, not because it wants to be, but because it has to be. And that's when it settles in. This isn't a task you finish quickly. This isn't something you complete and move on from. This is the day, hours of this, the same movement, the same effort, the same repetition. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms responding automatically now. And as you do, one thought begins to form quietly in the back of your mind. You haven't even been working that long, and already you can feel how hard this life is going to be. You fall into the rhythm without really choosing to. Push, lift, step, repeat. At first, each movement feels deliberate, like your body is still learning what to do. But slowly, almost quietly, something changes. The repetition takes over. Your muscles begin to remember, not perfectly, but enough. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval agricultural work was almost entirely manual, meaning that tasks like ploughing, sowing, and harvesting required continuous physical effort for hours at a time, often with very few breaks. You feel that now, not as a sudden weight, but as something that builds. Each motion adds just a little more strain. Your arms feel slightly heavier. Your grip tightens without you realizing it. Your shoulders begin to carry the effort. You press the tool into the ground again. The soil gives, but only after resistance. It always resists first. You pull back, shifting your weight, stepping forward again. Push, lift, step, repeat. The pattern continues. You glance up briefly, just to break the rhythm for a second. The field stretches farther than you expected. More people, all doing the same thing, each in their own small space. No one stops. No one complains. Because this isn't something you react to, it's something you endure. A quirky historical tidbit is that in some regions, entire families, including children, worked in the fields together, contributing to the same labor-intensive tasks from a young age. You notice that now. Smaller figures among the workers, moving in simpler ways but still part of the process. No separation, no special treatment, just participation. You return your focus to the ground. Push, lift, step, repeat. The tool feels heavier now, not because it's changed, but because you have. Your energy is slowly being spent. You shift your grip slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position. It helps for a moment. Then the discomfort returns. Historians still argue whether medieval workers experienced constant exhaustion, or if their bodies adapted over time to make the labor feel more manageable. Perhaps it was both a slow adjustment to an unchanging demand. You can feel that possibility, because even as the work continues, something inside you begins to settle, not into comfort, but into acceptance. You stop thinking about each individual motion. You just do it. Push, lift, step, repeat. Time becomes harder to track. There's no clock, no clear marker, just the position of the sun, slowly climbing higher, almost unnoticed. Your breathing deepens again, your chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Sweat begins to form. Faint at first, then more noticeable. It doesn't feel refreshing. It feels earned. You pause again just for a second, straightening your back, letting your arms rest at your sides. The relief is immediate, but brief, because the moment you stop, you feel the weight of starting again. So you do. You step forward, push, lift, step, repeat. The ground doesn't change. The task doesn't change. Only your energy does. You notice the small things now, the way the soil clings slightly to the tool, the way your hands adjust without thinking, the way your body leans into the movement, conserving effort where it can. It's not efficiency in a modern sense. It's survival. You look around again, just briefly. Everyone is still moving, still working, still part of the same endless pattern. You take another breath, slower this time, and something becomes clear. This isn't just hard work. It's constant work. There's no shortcut, no easier version, just repetition, hour after hour. You feel it in your arms now more than before. Not pain exactly, but fatigue. A steady, growing heaviness that doesn't go away. It just becomes part of the movement. You keep going, because stopping doesn't help. Stopping just delays the inevitable return. Push, lift, step, repeat. The sun rises higher, its light spreading more evenly across the field. It doesn't bring relief. It just makes everything more visible, more real. You take another breath, your body fully engaged now, your mind quieter, because there's not much space left for thinking, only doing. And as the rhythm continues, one realization settles in, slowly but firmly. This isn't just something you do for a few hours. This is your day, your energy, your time, given entirely to this. And as you press the tool into the ground once more, feeling the resistance, feeling your body respond, you understand something deeply. This kind of work doesn't just tire you, it defines you. You don't notice the smell all at once. It doesn't arrive suddenly or demand your attention. It's already there, Has been from the moment you woke up, but now, as your body settles into the rhythm of work, as your breathing deepens and your awareness sharpens, it begins to stand out more clearly. Not as one single scent, but as layers. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval villages and towns often lacked organized waste disposal systems, meaning everyday refuse, both human and animal, was commonly left in open areas or simple pits. You don't need to see it to understand it. You can feel it in the air. You take a slow breath, and this time you don't ignore it. There's the earth first damp, heavy, freshly turned beneath your hands. Then something sharper, faint but distinct. Animal presence. Not overwhelming, just constant. And beneath that, something else, something that lingers. You press the tool into the ground again. Push, lift, step, repeat. The smell doesn't go away. It moves with you. A quirky historical tidbit is that in many medieval communities, waste from animals was often reused as fertilizer for fields, meaning the same ground you're working now may have been enriched with materials you'd rather not think about. You don't need to think about it. Your senses already know. You shift slightly, your foot pressing into the soil, and there's a subtle change in texture, a softness that wasn't there before. You don't stop, you just adjust. Because that's what everyone else is doing. Historians still argue whether people of the Middle Ages were more tolerant of these environmental conditions due to constant exposure, or if they simply became desensitized over time. You can feel that process beginning already, because while the smell is noticeable, it's not overwhelming anymore. Not like it would be if you had just arrived. It's becoming background. You take another breath, and it blends. Earth, animals, something else, all merging into one steady presence. You glance up briefly, noticing a cart passing in the distance, pulled slowly, carrying something you don't examine too closely. The air shifts slightly as it moves by, bringing a stronger wave of scent for just a moment, then it fades again. You return to your work. Push, lift, step, repeat. Your body continues, your senses adapt. You realize something subtle. The smell isn't separate from the work, it's part of it, part of the land, part of the life. You move forward, your hands tightening slightly on the tool, your arms working through the now familiar motion. And the smell stays, not changing, not disappearing, just existing. You notice how no one reacts to it. No hesitation, no discomfort. Because for them, there's nothing to react to. This is normal. You press the tool down again, the soil giving way, and for a brief moment, a slightly stronger scent rises from the ground itself. It passes quickly, but you notice it. You always notice it now. And then you don't, because your mind lets it go. You take a slow breath, your body continuing its steady rhythm. Push, lift, step, repeat. The world narrows slightly, not visually, but mentally. You're focused on the task, on the movement, on maintaining your pace, and everything else fades just enough. The smell is still there, but it no longer interrupts you. It simply exists alongside everything else. You glance around again, noticing how seamlessly it all fits together. The land, the work, the people, the air. Nothing is isolated. Everything blends. You take another breath, and this time you don't even think about it, because you've already adjusted, already accepted it, already made it part of your normal, and realization settles in quietly, because it means something important. If something like this, something so noticeable at first, can become background so quickly, then what else might you adapt to? What else might become normal? You press the tool into the ground again, your body responding without hesitation now, and as you continue working, surrounded by the same steady, unchanging environment, you begin to understand something deeper. Life here isn't about comfort. It's about endurance, and even the air you breathe is something you learn to endure. You keep working, push, lift, step, repeat. But as your body settles deeper into the rhythm, something else begins to surface again. Not fatigue, not the smell, something quieter. Thirst. At first it's easy to ignore, just a slight dryness in your mouth. A faint reminder that you've been moving, breathing, working. Nothing urgent. But slowly, steadily, it grows. You pause for a moment, straightening your back. your eyes scanning the area, and that's when you notice it a small group of people stepping away from the field, heading toward a familiar direction. Water. You follow, your steps slower now, your body welcoming even this brief shift in routine. A mainstream historical fact is that access to clean drinking water in medieval times was inconsistent, especially in crowded settlements. Wells, rivers, and communal sources were often used, but not always well protected from contamination. You don't think about that yet, you just move toward it. The ground shifts beneath your feet as you leave the worked soil behind, becoming firmer, more compact. The air feels slightly different here, cooler maybe, or just less stirred by constant movement. You see it now, a simple well, nothing decorative, just stone, worn from years of use, with a wooden frame above it and a rope hanging down into darkness. People gather around it quietly. No rush, no urgency, just a shared understanding. You step closer, watching as someone pulls the rope, the bucket rising slowly from below. The sound of it wood against stone, rope tightening feels steady, almost calming. The bucket reaches the top, water sloshing gently inside. Clear? Maybe. It looks fine at a glance. You take a container offered to you, simple, worn, practical, and wait. Your turn. A quirky historical tidbit is that in some medieval towns, people preferred drinking weak ale or beer over water, because the brewing process could make it safer by killing certain harmful organisms. You glance at the water again. You don't have that option here. This is what you have. The container is filled and passed to you. You lift it slowly. The surface of the water reflects a faint, distorted image of the sky above. You hesitate for just a second. Then you drink. It's cool. That's the first thing you notice. Cool and refreshing after the steady effort of work. You take another sip. Then another. Your body responds immediately, welcoming it, absorbing it, easing that dryness. But as you swallow, there's something else. A subtle taste. Not strong, not unpleasant exactly, just different. Slightly earthy. Maybe mineral, maybe something else you can't quite place. You lower the container, considering it for a moment. Historians still argue whether medieval water sources were as dangerous as often portrayed, or if people developed tolerances to certain bacteria over time. While contamination did occur, not every sip led to illness, but the risk was always present. You don't feel sick. Not now. But the thought lingers. You take one last sip, then hand the container back. The thirst fades. For now, you step aside, letting others move forward, repeating the same quiet process. There's no discussion, no concern, just routine. You take a slow breath, the air settling around you again, and begin to walk back toward the field. The water sits in your system now, bringing a slight sense of relief, but not comfort. Because even something as simple as drinking comes with uncertainty here. You step back onto the softer ground, your feet sinking slightly again, your body returning to the familiar position. The tool waits. The work continues. Push, lift, step, repeat. But now, something has changed. Not physically, but mentally. Because you understand something more clearly now. Even the basic things, food, water, rest, aren't guaranteed to be safe or satisfying. They simply exist. You take another breath, your body moving through the rhythm once more. And as you do, that subtle aftertaste lingers just faintly at the back of your mind. Not enough to stop you, but enough to remind you, life here isn't just hard because of the work. It's hard because even the things meant to sustain you carry their own quiet risks. You return to the field, the rhythm waiting for you exactly where you left it. Push, lift, step, repeat. At first, nothing feels different. The same motion, the same effort, the same steady pace of work stretching out ahead of you. But something subtle has shifted, not in the ground, not in the air, in the people. You begin to notice it slowly, a slight pause here, a slower movement there, someone straightening up a bit longer than usual, their hand resting briefly on their side before returning to the task. It's easy to miss, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. A mainstream historical fact is that illness was a constant presence in medieval life, often spreading quickly due to closed living conditions, limited hygiene, and a lack of medical knowledge. You feel that reality now, not as something dramatic, but as something quiet, persistent. You glance to your side, noticing someone working just a little slower than before. Their movements aren't as smooth, their rhythm slightly off. They don't stop, they just continue differently. You return to your own work. Push, lift, step, repeat. But now your awareness stretches beyond yourself. You start to notice the small signs. A cough, soft, quick, almost hidden. Then another, somewhere behind you. Not loud, not alarming, just present. A quirky historical tidbit is that many medieval remedies for illness were based on herbal mixtures, superstition, or balancing the body's humours rather than treatments we would recognize as scientifically effective today. You think about that for a moment, not deeply, just enough to understand, if something happens here, there isn't much to rely on. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms responding automatically. Push, lift, step, repeat. Historians still argue whether medieval communities had a stronger sense of collective resilience in the face of illness, or whether they simply had no choice but to continue working despite it. You can see that now, because no one leaves, no one steps away for long. Even those who seem slightly off remain part of the rhythm. You notice another worker pause, pressing a hand briefly against their forehead, then lowering it again as they return to the task. It's not dramatic, it's quiet endurance. You take a slow breath, your body continuing its motion, your mind observing, and for a moment you wonder, if you felt unwell here, would you stop, or would you keep going? You don't have to answer, because the environment answers for you. Work doesn't wait. The day doesn't pause. Push, lift, step, repeat. You feel your own body now. The strain in your arms, the steady pull in your back, the dryness returning faintly in your throat. Nothing unusual, but enough to remind you how thin the line is between feeling fine and not. You glance up again, the sun now higher in the sky, casting longer light across the field. It doesn't feel warm enough to comfort you. It just marks time. And time here moves forward no matter what. You hear another cough, then silence, then the steady sound of tools against soil again. You realize something quietly. Illness here isn't always sudden. It doesn't always announce itself. It builds slowly, quietly, just like the fatigue, just like the smell, just like everything else. You press the tool down again, your body moving with less thought now. Push, lift, step, repeat. And as you continue, that awareness settles deeper, because you understand now, this life isn't just physically demanding, it's fragile, not in an obvious way, but in a constant underlying way, where something small can become something bigger. And yet, life continues. You take another breath, your body steady, your mind calm, because there's no room for worry here, only continuation. And as the rhythm carries you forward once more, one thought lingers quietly. You're not just working against the land, you're working against your own limits. Every single day, you don't notice when the light changes, not at first. It happens slowly, the sun climbing higher, the shadows shortening, the air shifting just slightly as the day moves forward. But your body notices, because the rhythm never stops. Push, lift, step, repeat, and eventually something inside you begins to look for relief, not a full rest, just a pause. You straighten your back again, this time holding it a little longer. Your arms hang loosely for a moment, your fingers flexing slightly, trying to release the tension that's been building since morning. Around you, others do the same. Not all at once, not together, but gradually. A quiet understanding passes through the field. It's time. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval workers did take short breaks during the day, often tied to natural pauses like midday. But these were brief and practical rather than restful in a modern sense. You step away from your spot, your legs feeling heavier now than they did before. Not painfully so, just used. You move toward a shaded area near the edge of the field. It's not much, just a patch where the sun doesn't hit directly, but it feels different enough to matter. You sit down slowly, and for the first time since the morning began, you stop, completely. No movement, no repetition. Just stillness. It feels unfamiliar. Your body doesn't immediately relax. It almost expects to keep going, like the rhythm is still echoing somewhere inside you. Push, lift, step, repeat. But gradually that fades. You take a slow breath, your chest rising and falling more evenly now. The ground beneath you is firm, slightly uneven, but after hours of standing, it feels almost welcome. A quirky historical tidbit is that midday meals for peasants were often simple and portable bread, cheese, or leftover porridge foods that could be eaten quickly without interrupting the workday for too long. You notice it now, people reaching into small cloth bundles, breaking off pieces of bread, passing around simple food. No ceremony, no preparation, just sustenance. You're handed something similar, a small portion, rough in texture, familiar in its simplicity. You take a bite. It's dry. More so than the morning meal. You chew slowly, your mouth adjusting, your body accepting it without expectation. It doesn't refresh you, but it helps, a little. Historians still argue whether medieval workers experienced these breaks as moments of genuine rest or simply as necessary pauses to maintain productivity throughout long days of labor. You can feel that question now, because this doesn't feel like rest. It feels like recovery, just enough to continue. You lean back slightly, your eyes drifting toward the sky. It's brighter now, clearer, stretching endlessly above you. For a moment, everything feels still. The sounds are softer here. Distant movement, faint voices, the occasional shift of someone nearby. Nothing urgent, nothing demanding. And yet, you know it won't last. You take another bite, slower this time, your body absorbing what little energy it can. The dryness lingers, but you've already learned not to focus on that. You swallow, then take a small sip of water if it's available. Again, it helps, but only slightly. You glance around. No one lingers for long. They eat, they sit, they breathe. And then they begin to move again. Not immediately, but inevitably. You feel it too. That quiet pull, that sense that this moment, this stillness is temporary. You place the remaining food aside or finish what little is left and rest your hands on your knees. For just one more second, one more breath. And then you stand, slowly. Your legs respond, a bit heavier now, a bit slower, but still capable. You stretch slightly, your back easing just enough to feel the difference. And then the rhythm returns. Push, lift, step, repeat. The break is over. Not because you chose it, but because it always ends. You step back into your place, your hands finding the tool again, your body slipping back into the motion almost automatically. And as you do, one realization settles quietly into your mind. Even your rest is limited here. Short, practical. Just enough to keep you going, nothing more. You return to the rhythm almost without thinking. Push, lift, step, repeat. But something has changed. Not in the work itself. The ground is the same, the tool is the same, the motion unchanged. But your body now carries the weight of everything that came before. The morning cold, the rough clothing, the simple meal, the hours of labor, the short, almost not rest. It all adds up. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval laborers often worked long days that could stretch from sunrise to sunset, with productivity tied directly to survival, especially during critical agricultural seasons. You feel that pressure now, not as urgency, but as inevitability, because stopping early doesn't mean comfort. It means falling behind. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms responding slower this time. Push, lift, step, repeat. The motion is still there, but the ease is gone. Your muscles don't recover the way they did earlier. Each movement feels just a little heavier, just a little slower to complete. You adjust your grip again, your fingers tightening slightly around the handle. It helps, for a moment. Then the weight returns. A quirky historical tidbit is that many medieval workers had no concept of a weekend or regular days off. Rest days were often tied to religious observances or seasonal breaks rather than personal choice. You think about that briefly, not deeply, just enough to realize this isn't a one-day challenge. This is every day. You glance up at the sun again. It's higher now, brighter, but it doesn't feel comforting. It feels like a reminder. There's still time left, more work to do. Historians still argue whether medieval labor felt more meaningful due to its direct connection to survival, or more exhausting because of its unrelenting nature and lack of alternatives. You can feel both sides. There's clarity in what you're doing, but no relief from it. You press the tool down again. Push, lift, step, repeat. Your breathing deepens again, heavier now, more noticeable. Your chest rises and falls with effort, not just motion. Sweat forms again, this time more steadily, moving slowly along your skin before being absorbed into your clothing, the same clothing. Still rough, still present. You shift your shoulders slightly, trying to release some of the tension, but it only moves elsewhere. Your arms, your back, your legs. Everything is working. Everything is being used. You pause again just for a second. Not a full stop, just enough to straighten up, to let your spine reset. And in that moment you feel it, clearly. Fatigue. Not sudden, not overwhelming, but constant. You lower your arms again and continue, because that's what the day demands. Push, lift, step, repeat. The ground resists as it always has. But now, so do you. Not consciously, but physically. Your body hesitates for just a fraction of a second before each movement, like it's measuring the effort. Then it continues, because it has to. You notice the same thing around you. Movements are slightly slower, less fluid, but still steady. No one stops. No one leaves, because this isn't optional. You take another breath, your lungs filling deeply, then releasing slowly. The rhythm continues, and with it your energy fades, not completely, but enough to feel the difference between morning and now. You understand something more clearly in this moment. This kind of work doesn't just take effort. It takes time, and time takes energy, and energy doesn't fully come back. Not here, not like this. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms responding, your body continuing. Push, lift, step, repeat. And as the cycle repeats, one thought settles quietly into your mind. You're not just working through the day anymore. You're working through your limits. And the day isn't finished yet. The light begins to change again. Not dramatically, just enough that you notice it without really thinking about it. The sun shifts, the shadows stretch a little longer, and the air loses that faint edge it had earlier. It doesn't get cooler yet, just softer. But the work doesn't change. Push, lift, step, repeat. If anything, the shift in light only makes one thing clearer. You've been doing this for a long time. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval life was deeply influenced by natural cycles, daylight, seasons, and weather, dictated not just work hours, but survival itself. You feel that now, because there's no clock telling you when to stop, only the sun, and the sun is still there. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms slower now, your movements more deliberate. Push, lift, step, repeat. But something else begins to settle into the air, a subtle tension, not from the people, from the environment. You notice the sky first. It's still clear, but not entirely. There's a faint shift in color near the horizon, a slight dulling of brightness, like something is slowly moving in. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't already paying attention. A quirky historical tidbit is that medieval farmers often relied on simple observation of the sky and environment to predict weather, since there were no formal forecasting systems available. You can see why. Because here, you have to. You pause for just a second, straightening up, your eyes scanning the distance. The field stretches outward, unchanged, but the air feels just a little heavier. Or maybe that's just you. Historians still argue whether medieval people had a more intuitive understanding of weather patterns due to constant exposure, or if sudden changes still caught them off guard despite their experience. You wonder that now, because even without understanding it fully, you can feel something shifting. You lower your arms again and continue. Push, lift, step, repeat. The rhythm holds, but your awareness stays slightly elevated. You notice the wind next, or rather, the lack of it. The air feels still, too still. The sounds around you seem quieter, like they're being absorbed rather than carried. You press the tool into the ground again, your movement steady but slower. Push, lift, step, repeat. You glance around, noticing a few others doing the same quick looks upward, small pauses in movement before returning to work. No one says anything, because there's nothing to say yet, just observation. You take a slow breath, the air feeling thicker than before, and then A faint shift, a light breeze passes through, just enough to move the edge of your clothing, to stir the surface of the field slightly. It doesn't bring relief. It brings awareness. You stop for half a second, your body reacting before your mind does. Then you continue. Because the work doesn't stop for possibility, only for reality. Push, lift, step, repeat. The sky darkens just slightly. Not enough to alarm, but enough to notice. You feel it now, not just in the air, but in your thoughts, because weather here isn't background, it's control. Rain can change everything. Cold can stop you. Heat can drain you faster than you expect. You press the tool into the ground again, your arms responding with effort. Push, lift, step, repeat, lift. And as you do, that awareness grows. You are not in control here, not of the land, not of the day, not even of the sky above you. You work within it. You adapt to it. You endure it. Another faint breeze passes, this time slightly cooler. You feel it against your face, your arms, your neck. It doesn't last, but it leaves a trace behind, a reminder. You glance upward once more, the clouds now just slightly more visible than before. Nothing certain, nothing immediate, just possibility. You return your focus to the ground again, your body continuing its now heavy rhythm. Push, lift, step, repeat. Because even if something changes, you don't stop. Not yet, not until you have to. And that realization settles in quietly, because it means something important. Your life here isn't just hard because of what you do. It's hard because of everything you can't control. And as you press the tool into the ground once more, feeling the resistance, feeling your body respond, you understand something clearly. You're not just working against the land, you're working under it. Under the sky, under the conditions that decide everything. And all you can do is keep going.